And in our studio, we have our specialist guest, Mr. Witold Roskiewicz from the Center for Eastern Studies, who will be telling us about the practical side, hopefully, of these latest travel limitations. Mr. Rodkiewicz, how feasible are these new limitations on the movement, the travel of the Russian diplomats? Are we to expect some sort of a Cold War followers of those diplomats, following them in sort of a max and dark sunglasses? Are we looking at technology? How feasible, how practical are these latest limitations on the movement of the diplomats?
Okay, first, the basic problem is we don't really have the details of how these limitations have been defined by the Polish side, so we have to wait for the details if they are ever made public, that is. But the basic problem, again, and I think that the analogies with the Cold War are not quite accurate. To a certain sense, this is the repetition of the Cold War situation, but in a broader context, I think the situation is very different, because we are at the moment, and that's what really makes this move important, is that we are in, at least the Russian side sees itself as being in a kind of, as they call it, a hybrid war with the West. So we are in fact, we are in a condition of, in a state of a very acute conflict, and this is why measures are necessary to protect security of the countries that are opposing Russian aggression, including these restrictions on diplomats. Because the basic problem that we faced, that all the countries of the West faced, and this is a certain similarity with the situation in the Cold War, was that the Soviet Union before and now Russia has been built has been created as one might call a security state. In other words, its resources which it could devote to such activities like following of diplomats and sort of surveillance and restrictions on its own population were incomparably larger than the West side could. In practice, this meant that if the Russians had enormous resources to follow Western diplomats in their normal course of action, the Western side was always extremely short of resources to follow Russian or Soviet and then Russian diplomats when they were pursuing, activities that were going beyond their diplomatic official role. And that was the problem. That's why the restrictions on the movement are supposed to somehow equalize the balance. And from that point of view, also the Russian response, which is likely to be very similar, with restrictions on Polish diplomats in Russia, are not necessarily very harmful to the Polish side, because the role of the Polish diplomats in Russia is extremely limited at the moment. This is because the Russian side imposes restrictions on its own population, so the kind of ability to go and meet with people to sort of convey, spread Polish point of view and establish normal contacts are really not possible any longer. And in fact, this was even in some ironical way reflected by the way that the Russian foreign policy spokeswoman, in fact, reacted to the whole affair, because she said, as far as she knows, Polish diplomats are just enjoying themselves because they don't have anything, they're not really conducting their normal diplomatic activities. And in a way, this is true, because the Russian side has made it impossible to do that. So Russian retaliation measures are not going to be are not really going to have any impact, whereas our restrictions are hopefully going to make it more difficult for the Russian diplomats to pursue their unsavory activities, like spying or contacts with agents of influence or people who are willing to be useful idiots for the Russian side in this conflict that we are in the middle of.
Okay, well, Witold Roskiewicz, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts on the matter. We appreciate it.